stay until the end. Let's backtrack to 2000. I left Virginia, broken down by the separation from my ex-girlfriend and my 2 kids. I was hurt not only spiritually and morally, but my health also played a role in my story. I was suffering from upper nerve, joint, and back pain on top of my distress. I packed all my belongings into my Volvo and headed down south to Florida to start a new journey, stopping in North Carolina to see my kids for a brief visit. I started working in Tampa, and she moved minutes away to Seffner, Florida, with her mother. I rented my cousin's garage in order to have a home base once I got back from my long-distance work. I separated from that job over a money dispute. It was fall, and my kids came to stay with me in the garage. Since I left Virginia, I haven't had a doctor to prescribe the medication that works for my nerves and pain. My energy feels drastically lower, but all I want is to stay at home with my kids. Unfortunately, kids will be kids, and they might fight with other kids. That's what happened, and it created a little tension that led to me leaving the place and returning the kids to their mother. I got my kids back once the coronavirus started, right after purchasing a new car, and with no home to go to, we went down to have the most amazing lockdown experience in Miami on my brother's sailboat. It was amazing, but still, something else was not as it was supposed to be. My energy didn't let me be myself to the fullest, how I needed and wanted to be. I was experimenting with steroids for my pain and energy, but I had no energy whatsoever. But the fun was over. The government reopened the economy, and I had to find a job, so the kids went back to their mom. It took me longer than ever to find a job. I was growing anxious and had limitations on what jobs to work for according to agreements with their mother. My life spiraled into a series of nightmares. Homelessness was my harsh reality, while my ex-girlfriend, along with our 2 children, stayed with her mother. My ex asked me to take her to a Tampa hospital as she wanted different results from those she'd received at other local hospitals. At the hospital drop-off, I noticed people handing out flyers. Initially, I thought they were valet employees, but I now believe they might have been cult recruiters. A few days later, she excitedly told me about a new religion she found online. Despite it sounding like a cult, she reassured me, "Don't worry, if it gets dangerous, I'll leave." She really thought that they could help her. She was fascinated by their extensive online literature and even considered starting her own cult to help others. Her interest in numerology grew. She insisted it was a self-taught pursuit, separate from the cult's teachings. She will never use or accept the description of the cult as she described before. She's been brainwashed, and now she's full of mystery. I've started suppressing my thoughts, and my own lack of understanding and misinformation is fueling anxiety about what the future holds if I'm unable to provide the home my kids need. Her rapid changes were alarming. She hacked my phone by lying to me about a code she sent to my phone. I was trusting her because she is my friend. She began distancing herself from childhood friends and family, believing they were holding her back. She said, "People's purposes may serve us only for a short period, then it's time to move on with our own lives." She started a new job in a car insurance claim department and mentioned a Haitian man who offered financial advice, wanting nothing but her success. She also met Jose, a mechanic, who she felt was placed in her path by destiny. In a bold Facebook post, she announced her decision to block anyone not aiding her growth. Emerging from a period of deep depression, she declared her intention to associate only with those who support her journey forward, warning her parents about her mental state and also about people who were trying to take advantage of her by manipulating her and telling her to separate from everyone. According to her own accounts, she started having mutual feelings for her counselor named D'Angelo, whose study sessions only occurred after midnight, making her tired and restless, struggling to get the kids ready for school and herself for work. All I could see was her mental determination and a lot of crazy numerology and nonsense. I was supposed to be the last old friend she had around, but she told me it was time for me to find my own counselor, as she had found hers. When I said I didn't need one, she insisted that everyone does and that my purpose in her life was done. I got 2 new phones for my daughter and myself because my old phone was hacked by someone who, at the moment, was a mystery. I started noticing people around me looking like brainwashed zombies. I started feeling uncomfortable, and my natural built-in social anxiety started kicking in as a defensive mechanism. This new Motorola got hacked by her when she sent me a link to see a video of my kids. But she's unaware that her phone is also hacked by her new cult counselors. That night, I was on the phone with her grandmother, expressing my concerns, and I felt that I was not being understood. I decided to grab my phone at midnight and went to check on my kids and her. Once I got into the complex, I started recording, and there she was in her car on the street, looking angry and depressed. A black pickup truck with tinted windows sped past and stopped, revving its engine to provoke fear. I feared for her, so I got out of the car, expecting someone might try to hurt her. The truck started backing up, then stopped for a minute and left. I asked her if she knew the truck. She reassured me that she didn't. She asked me what I was doing, and I lied about making a delivery, not knowing how to tell her that I was concerned about her and my kids. I reviewed the video I took and started changing the filters for better visibility. Images started appearing, and I took screenshots. The next day, I emailed the video to her grandmother and my niece, asking them to try finding something on those videos on their computers to see if they captured what I captured on my phone, because I knew that what I was finding in the screenshots wasn't normal. The following day, I returned to check on my ex-girlfriend and our children. She awoke disoriented, seemingly unaware of her surroundings. I expressed my alarm about the video I had sent her, detailing the previous night's unsettling events. I emphasized my worry for our children's safety, especially given the potential danger in their neighborhood and the lack of supervision. She initially claimed not to have seen my texts, but upon viewing them, she grew anxious, fearing stalkers from her past. She then showed me a profile picture that she believed belonged to her stalker. To my shock, it was my own photo, albeit with altered details. I tried to convince her that someone was manipulating her online, possibly the same individuals she had encountered through the cult. During a FaceTime call with Jose, the mechanic, the conversation took a bizarre turn. He seemed confused and disoriented, questioning why he was involved. My ex-girlfriend suggested that it might be destiny that brought us together, even proposing that Jose could be my counselor. He began to offer advice as if we were a couple, revealing his own past struggles with paranoia, addiction, and his time in prison. She insisted that we both get to know each other so he could mentor me. He now claimed to be part of a group aiding abuse victims. The discussion deteriorated further when my ex-girlfriend declared she had a revelation that we were working for her, as she attempted to add another person, D'Angelo, to the call. However, a technical glitch caused her to scream in fright and abruptly end the call. Jose then accused me of trying to manipulate and scare her, alleging that I fabricated the video and the incident with the pickup truck. Amidst the heated exchange, our daughter emerged, tears streaming down her face, pleading for the argument to cease. After soothing her and sending her back to bed, I returned to the car to conclude the conversation. With the phone to her ear, she asked me to leave, threatening to call the police if I didn't comply. So I did. When my ex was living with her mom, grandma, and aunt begged me to take custody of my kids, but I was struggling with the aftermath of the coronavirus and was homeless. My ex herself asked me to find them a place. I was overwhelmed and not making enough to save for a place. In November 2021, during the Thanksgiving school break, I had planned to take the kids back to Miami to visit their uncles and go stone crab fishing. That Friday weekend, I went to get them from the after-school camp and they weren't there. Their mom had picked them up. I tried calling but got no answer, so I went to check on them. When I looked through the window, my 10-year-old son was cooking on the stove without supervision. I asked them to come outside, and they told me their mother was passed out in her room. I felt that the right thing to do was to take the kids to Miami as we had planned in advance. We texted their aunt in NC that we were heading down to Miami. Their mother woke up after 16 hours and called me, asking why I took the kids. I told her that she was not in a condition to care for them and asked her to help me enroll them in a Miami school. She demanded them back, and I said she should give me custody. She warned me to get them back by Monday. On Monday, I called the school and asked for help to get the kids on remote schooling because I was dealing with difficulties back home. The school guided me on how to do it, but I wasn't able to. Tuesday, I was still trying and getting frustrated at the computer when she called me and asked me to bring the kids back. I asked her to please help me get the kids enrolled because I was trying on my computer, but it wasn't working for me. She laughed and said, "Of course you can't." She started asking me exaggerated questions, and a police officer took over the call and asked me to bring the kids back or he would charge me with kidnapping. He had a nasty attitude. I was trying to explain why I was making that choice, and she jumped into the conversation and said they knew about my anxiety. I responded to the officer, asking if she told him about her suicidal thoughts and that my kids were not safe with her. The police were still being nasty and not listening to reason, asking me to bring the kids back or face charges. The call dropped off. I gathered my kids, and they were very disappointed, but we had to come up with a plan. I started driving up north to Tampa. My kids recognized that people were having some kind of dialogue or interrogation about us back home, but I noticed my son trying to stop my daughter from talking too much. I know my kids know much more than they are sharing, especially since my son asked me twice that week, "Is my mom going to jail?" That question reassured me that there were a lot of secrets behind what I knew, and it was killing me. but I was sure that school officials would listen and look after my kids' well-being. I wanted to have the opportunity to show my phones and provide evidence of their mother's negligence and mental illness. I got to the school with my kids and asked to speak to a director to explain why I needed help to enroll the kids online and the whole situation. They made me wait outside for minutes and then told me to come back at noon. I was waiting in the parking lot of the school a little before noon when I saw cops walking into the school. I knew they were there for me, but I had my phones to prove that I was doing the right thing. I assumed the cops would listen by the door. The police came out and put handcuffs on me right at my kids' school without listening to me. I said I had proof on my phones that their mother needs mental help and my kids are better off somewhere else. They asked me to give them the password to my phone. I said no. I said I could open the phone with my fingerprint and that I didn't feel comfortable giving them my passwords. We could have a dialogue. She said if I didn't give her the phone password, she would take me to jail. Then I asked why she was passing judgment on me without listening to what I had to say. That's why I came to the school to speak to a school director, thinking that they would be impartial and look out for the best interests of the children. They made me feel like fathers don't have rights in FL. I was booked in jail without being allowed to say a word. They accused me of kidnapping my own kids after I had proof on my old phones that she had given me custody of the kids because she was mentally incapable of taking care of them. Imagine how I felt, thinking there was a group of people after my kids and that the mentioned cult had everything to do with it. The black market came to mind. She dropped the charges weeks later because my brother offered her money to drop the charges and she accepted. Now, in mid-November 2021, I'm out of jail, but all my phones are still in the evidence room. I have no proof or evidence to help my kids or even her from her new cult manipulating mental health group. I found an ad on Craigslist from someone offering a free mobile home to stay for a handyman helper. I met up and explained the situation with my kids, and he also offered help to get custody of the kids. He said I could use his main house as an address so I could start a custody battle. Meanwhile, I started looking for a night job to afford legal expenses. I was reaching out to family from both sides, letting everyone know that I was under deep surveillance. I tried to explain how my baby mom and kids were being manipulated. I started thinking of police involvement since they violated my rights, never questioned my side of the story, and kept my phones in evidence for over a month. Once I finally got my phone back, I started noticing more and more evidence of my phone being bugged. My anxiety grew bigger and worse. It's hard to handle when the whole world is falling apart, when that reality in front of me is palpable and visible. For others, it's too improbable, and controlling high officials. It's just me against this reality at this point in my life, in the new year of 2022. I lost one winter of celebration without my kids. This is more than I've ever had to handle in my life. At this point, I'm still trying to figure out who I am and what makes me different from the rest of the people's view. Thoughts that never stop without commands or suppressing them artificially. I was 2 years away from discovering my own truth. Being homeless, misunderstood with social anxiety, and a naturally low-energy person, all I could do was sit in my car and suppress my thoughts and emotions in any way possible. I was helpless with a warrior's heart. January 7th marks a very important event. I finally received a phone call from a different phone number from my ex. She asked me to stay silent and listen to her. She said, "I know what connects us. I know why you care about me so much. I was doing research on your family trees, and I found that back in the slave trade, our ancestors met, and that's why we are connected." Even though I was happy to hear from her, I was still mad at her for putting me through all that hell, and I mocked the idea and put her on speaker so my cousin could hear the crazy stuff that I was telling him about, and she hung up. I called her back and apologized, and I asked her to finish the conversation because even if I didn't agree, it was my opportunity to open her eyes about her new mentors cyber-attacking both of us. She said we should be there for the kids. We've got to make this work. I'm going to call you later for you to see the kids. In the afternoon, my son called me frantically, asking me to come to the house because his mom lost her mind and was screaming that the neighbor was going to kill us. My son said, "She said that you were right, Dad, that you were trying to help us." I rushed there, and her grandmother from Georgia was there for some reason and called me, asking what she said to me, and I replied that we've got to work together for our kids, and she was supposed to call me back. Her grandmother asked if I could convince her to come to the hospital because she didn't want to call 911 for an ambulance. So I replied, "Sure, I can." Someone took my kids to their grandma's house in between. Once I got to my ex's house, she said, "Haitian people are bad." She was out of her mind, those eyes, the nonsense she was saying, but everything was about intimidation. Someone had planted it on her. She didn't know that she was being cyber-attacked, bullied, and brainwashed by her own spiritual counselors. She was smiling like she hadn't had a shower in months and was skinnier than ever. I convinced her that nothing was going to happen around me and walked her to her grandmother's car. I walked her to the hospital, and her grandma checked her in while I walked her to her hospital bed. Feeling calmer, she said we've got to be there for our kids, and she kissed me. Her mother walked into the room, and I had to leave. Her mother didn't allow me to see my kids that night, but I thought that my nightmare would be over soon. I was wrong again. Someone got her out of the hospital, Advent Health in Brandon, Florida, the next day with a coronavirus certificate for my 2 kids and my ex-girlfriend. I got to see my kids days later when I spotted my ex moving out of her recently rented place, and I got to talk to them. My kids told me that their phones were being tracked. My son asked me once more if his mother was going to jail, and I said she is just a victim. I made the promise that I'll reveal the truth and never give up. I'll get them back sooner or later. Months later, she agreed to let me see my kids one last time. Once again, the same question from my son. Is my mother going to jail? I replied, I don't know this time. That's the last time I saw or talked to my kids. I believe they have been played by a cult because of her own account and actions. I've been harassed, followed, set up, recorded, and subjected to extortion. This cult is dedicated to finding people who have mental challenges to exploit them, abuse them, and kidnap their children. I should not be in any media or website as part of any recording. I never consent to or participate in any kind of film production. If there is any content of me or my kids, it's against my own will, and I will take legal action against those involved. And that's his unfortunate truth story to continue. What he finds out about himself is that he goes through his life without knowing that he's an adult autistic person.